In 2010, neuroscientist Sam Harris released the book The Moral Landscape, in which he claimed that he could explain morality and objective moral truths using science. Now, I've recently been reading this, as you'll know if you follow me on Twitter, which you can find here. And you'll also know that I'm not fully convinced by it, but I'm here with Stephen Woodford from Rationality Rules, a channel which I'm sure many of you have heard of, who thinks that it does hold some merit. Am I right in saying that? Is that
yep,
fair?
you're more than fair in saying that. As it currently stands, I buy it.
Right, so I thought it would be fun to sit down and discuss sort of our differences and what we agree on, because I feel like it's one of the things that's lost on YouTube particularly, but even just in philosophical discussion generally, like people just don't sit down and discuss, whereas philosophy is a discussive topic. It shouldn't all be written or composed. I think discussions are always good. So we have briefly spoken on this before, but just to sort of make sure that we have something to talk about. So what I suppose we should start with is perhaps if you, to the best of your ability, if you sort of outline what you think the argument is for the moral landscape for objective moral truths.
Sure. So first things first is that I think that I have the burden of proof here because I'm saying that objective morals exist at the present. And before I even go into this, I should state that I'm not the most confident apologist of his argument.
Right.
So I may not be as articulate as I could be, and I may not have answers that I should. Unfortunately, that will result with me going, you've got me there, I'm going to have to go think that one through. Hopefully that isn't the case, but if it is, I just want to point that out there. So it's more of a conversation than me trying to
likewise, I mean,
so
I'm not fully convinced of my not being convinced, if you see what I'm saying. So I think this...
and this is a huge one to digest, because if he is right, that there are objective moral values, it changes everything. It changes everything almost to the same extent that knowing that we don't have free will changes things. It's huge. Evolution, when that was first, well, more accurately, natural selection, huge, massive paradigm shift. If Sam is right here, then it is a huge difference, so I appreciate that.
Why do you think that it's so important? I mean, if we all have subjective morality anyway, and whether that manifests itself as objective and we think it's objective or not, if we all understand morality regardless of its objectivity, why is it so important to suddenly realise that it is objective? How does that change things in your eyes? Because
you can objectively say that it is wrong to throw battery acid in the face of little girls for the crime of reading.
Yes.
You can objectively say these things. You find otherwise well-intentioned liberals, especially those which are really far on the left, saying that morality is completely a construct of culture.
Yes.
So moral relativism, which is, I assume, where you kind of are at the present.
Well, that's not necessarily the case.
Okay.
Not exactly, because one of the great things actually that I like about Sam Harris's book, and it's worth prefacing this discussion, I think, in saying that I do actually think that this book is a fantastic piece of academic work. I do actually think it's a great book in that, to me, what it does is it removes cultural relativism, because even if I don't agree with the underlying premise of the morality being objective, if we can understand morality in the same way that Sam Harris does here, and we can act as though it is objective, then that gives us the right to go to other cultures and say, no, it's wrong to forcibly, to force women to wear burqas or to throw acid in people's faces. So I do think it has that merit. The only difference I have is the basis for which Sam Harris is giving himself the authority to do that.
Sure.
So I mean,
and hopefully I can make that case to you.
Exactly. So I suppose it's best to do that now. Why is it that Sam Harris feels, and you feel, I assume, that morality can be said to be objective, like a fact of nature?
Fantastic question, and that is the question. So Sam says that values are a certain type of fact, and he denies, or at the very least says that Hume is wrong with saying that you can't get an ought from an is. What Sam says, and what I agree with, is that you can only talk about an is by embracing certain oughts. Science has always been in the value business. It's just we don't look at it that way, which is ironically a cultural construct.
Right.
So these are things that I'm going to delve into further. I think the first thing to do would be to present the argument in its syllogistic form, and then to proceed through there, and then we can point out where you have the most disagreement with it, and then I can hopefully try and tell you why I currently am convinced that that's not a problem. Would that probably be best for you?
That
awesome.
Sounds great.
So it doesn't look great on camera, but I'm going to use my phone to do it because I can't memorise it.
I've realised when I read books, I make notes, and I should have brought my notes with me that I had for this book. I'm sure I would have had some good quotes. But yeah, no, you go ahead.
Yeah. I have a series of quotes on here which I may, if they become appropriate, I will bring them out. So he's put his argument across in many ways. There's not a single syllogism, but this is the one that I'm most comfortable to work with.
Okay.
Premise 1. Morality and values depend on the existence of conscious minds, and specifically on the fact that such minds can experience various forms of well-being and suffering in this universe. Premise 2. Conscious minds and their states are natural phenomena, of course, fully constrained by the laws of nature, whatever these end up being in the end. Premise 3, or conclusion. Therefore, there must be right and wrong answers to questions of morality and values that potentially fall within the purview of science.
Right.
So that's the syllogism. You're more than welcome to look at it if you like to at all.
And I'll probably see if I can get them up on the screen as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Starting with the first premise there, morality and values depend on the existence of conscious minds. Now, I don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Where I do disagree with you is that surely, to me, this seems to be definitively subjective. To say that something is dependent upon consciousness, is dependent upon the mind, doesn't that imply subjectivity in the sense that the fact that the Earth orbits the Sun, we can say that's an objective fact because it has nothing to do with our brains. It doesn't matter if there's consciousness about
for you to even perceive it.
Exactly.
You're already relying on subjectivity.
Well, yeah, but it would still be a fact if we didn't perceive it.
So whatever's happening is happening.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter
and consciousness, subjectivity, human minds have absolutely nothing to do with it. And to me, that's how you define objectivity. So to say something is subjective is to say that it's dependent upon the mind. It's dependent upon consciousness. And so in the first premise, saying morality has to definitively come from consciousness, is that not the same as saying it's subjective?
No, I wouldn't say so. So, for example, me and you experiencing what we're experiencing here, the water, if you break it down, where is it all coming from? It all comes from the brain. Would you accept that that seems to be what the evidence show?
I would say, I mean, our perception of it comes from the brain. But even if we didn't perceive it, surely it would still be here.
So what I mean is, like, all of your experiences, all of them, your capacity to have this conversation, that relates back to, that is your part of your consciousness, and your consciousness is part of your brain.
Okay.
Your brain is you can evaluate it.
Is a piece of nature. Yes.
So
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I would say that the fact that it's just a different type of fact. It's still a natural phenomenon. So whatever's happening is happening. Whatever's not is not.
You know, I might agree with you in the sense that the way I'm talking about subjectivity, I think you've cleared this up for me. For instance, if I say that this water tastes nice, that reasoning, that opinion is a product of
objective things
of my consciousness. Whereas morality, you're saying, is not a product of the brain, but it is a part of consciousness. It's sort of ingrained.
It all breaks down to consciousness when you follow it back to its root.
Now, this is the important thing, though. So, this is the argument, as I understand it, is saying that morality comes from consciousness, which is a product of the brain, which is measurable. So, in a sense, you can measure consciousness. You can measure.
Morality. Why you have any of your feelings, at least in principle. You can't do it.
Well, that's the thing. I was going to make a point. Sam Harris is strong in his distinction between answers in principle and answers in practice. So, for instance, the example that he uses, which I think is fantastic, is if you ask the question, how many people were bitten by mosquitoes in the past hour? Neither of us could possibly know that,
so
but there is an answer. There is an absolute number of how many people.
And then he draws that parallel with health, doesn't he? He says that there are answers that we may not ever know the answer to, but it doesn't change the fact that
there are answers.
There's still answers about the well-being of creatures, etc. So that's where he kind of throws that in.
I think with Harris, he's saying even if we can't achieve full understanding of the intricacies of moral dilemmas. For instance, another example he uses, he says something along the lines of, should we spend our next $1 billion curing racism or curing malaria?
Yes.
I mean, that's almost an impossible question. And even if we can't answer those things, what we can do is answer the more broader questions with more distinctive moral...
And if you did want to answer those questions, you have to appeal to people's values, which themselves are determined by the brain.
But this is the thing. This is where what it comes down to is the fact that the argument relies, as I was saying, morality stems from consciousness, which stems from the brain, and we can say that an action is good or bad depending on how much it affects the well-being of the consciousness
Correct.
of the creature.
Yeah.
So
as
in
long
effect,
as you may say that as long as you accept that assumption,
yes,
it works.
that's the assumption where I think we disagree.
Okay.
The majority of this book is spent saying, okay, so we've accepted that well-being is a good thing. Now let me spend the rest of the book arguing how we can know that there are objective facts about how to achieve well-being. That's the crux of the book. But that first assumption, which the rest of the book relies upon, to me falls flat. What is it about well-being that should constitute it to be the objective starting point of morality? Why should we value well-being, objectively speaking?
Cool. So I think that is the best question, the most important question to ask when it comes to this, when it comes to this syllogism, when it comes to his argument. Now, it also happens to be a question that a lot of people have asked. Most of the criticisms that he received are, to be quite blunt, crap. But this one had the most grip on me, and it was the hardest for me to get over, which I'll explain to you how I have, and then you can tell me.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same position.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You can tell me where I've went wrong, and hopefully, if you do so, then excellent. I will either have to go away and think it through more, or I'll go away and go, cheers, Alex. You've shown me that it is not objectively wrong to say that throwing acid in the face of children, which is just an inconvenient truth.
I saw somebody a comment on YouTube the other day that said something like, throwing acid is wrong in some people's eyes. I thought that was quite
That's good. So yeah, so allow me, I have a little bit of script, if you don't mind.
I guess.
One, I'll be able to convey it in the best way possible, but two, it's like I said, it's an objection a lot of people have.
Yes.
And I think it's because you're looking at morality and you're demanding more of the science of morality than you demand of any other branch of science. So if you just stick with me for this.
you get that up.
Okay, sure. So I'm just going to clarify what your position is, and you can just tell me if it's wrong. Because I want to, basically, with what I do with my videos, I want to stillman the objection that you have.
Okay.
So that I absolutely understand it before I run off. Because I don't want to be attacking something that you
like
don't.
one of Rappaport's rules of argument. Yeah.
Cool. I wasn't aware of that. I'll have to look him up.
Oh, it's a nice little. Daniel Dennett uses it a lot, and it's one of the things that Harris has criticised when they had an argument about free will. But he says that one of the most important things you can do when arguing is to put the other person's position as clearly as they could, so that they can't say that you misunderstand it or anything, and to make sure that you understand it fully.
Just so that you know, like if I was in a debate with you, I would be doing it to try and show you're wrong. Whereas here, I just want to understand it so that I can see that you're on the same bridge part that I was on.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think I am, because I'd love to be convinced of this. I really would.
Of course you would,
because it completely removes, like I say, cultural relativism.
It would have changed your debate with Turek.
Oh, hugely,
quite significantly.
Yeah.
So
I still probably would have done all right, but
you would have kicked his ass. But yeah, exactly.
It definitely would have changed, because one of the main things I've talked about on my channel so far is morality, in saying that it's not objective. Because this is an argument for God.
And if I am able to convince you, what a wonderful thing to see you go through that process.
Yeah, I'm going to absolutely change everything.
If you convince me that I'm wrong, awesome, excellent.
I think it would be.
Yeah,
I think it would be good.
I have more to lose, but to solidify your position.
Okay.
It seems that you accept that all forms of morality are fundamentally based on well-being.
Yes. Okay. I'll give you that.
And we can always come back if you go. Actually, can we come back to that? That well-being is a natural phenomenon, and that therefore there must be right and wrong answers to moral questions. But your contention is that you don't see why you should or ought to value well-being in the first place.
Yes.
You would say that despite the fact that every form of morality is, at its most fundamental level, based on well-being, it's still an assumption to say it is based on well-being.
Yes.
So would that be an accurate and fair representation of where you currently stand?
In the sense that, I mean, I'm sure that you would agree that, say, theft is wrong in most circumstances. Now,
as long as you assume the well-being part.
Yes. Now, but this is what I was going to say is that if we rounded up, if we questioned every single person on the planet, there would be some people who said that they didn't think it was wrong. That would happen. But even if it were the case that everybody agreed, that 100% of people decided it was wrong, that still wouldn't mean it's objective. Yeah. That just means it's a subjective fact that we all agree on. So this sense that all morality is based upon well-being, I concede that, but I'm saying that even if everybody agrees on that, it doesn't make it objective, if you see what I'm saying.
That's cool. But, I'm glad I've got your position down. So
yes, I think you have, as far as I can see.
Here is my angle, and if I don't, again, you just let me know.
Yes.
So I'm going to do what Sam does, and as he quite often compares morality and well-being to medicine and health.
Yes.
Because medicine is something that people don't criticise, but they do morality, and he has a problem with it. And my current state of mind is that I do as well. So just as all forms of morality are based on well-being, all forms of, let me see where it is, all forms of medicine are based on health. And so to say, why ought I value well-being is the same as saying, why ought I value health? It seems to me that if you want to say that there are right and wrong answers about medicine, for example, that homeopathy is objectively wrong, then you also have to say that there are right and wrong answers about morality. For example, everyone suffering for as long as possible is objectively wrong. And on the other hand, if you want to say that basing morality on well-being is a mere assumption, then you also have to say that basing medicine on health is a mere assumption.
Okay.
So I'm actually fine with either conclusion,
Right.
but I just want to highlight that it's logically inconsistent to demand that the science of morality overcome this objection while not demanding that the science of medicine also overcome it.
Yes, I agree.
And the same
I
with
agree with
other
that.
sciences.
What I would probably say, what I am going to say, would be that the purpose of medicine is to improve health.
That's an assumption, isn't it?
Well, that's what it sets out to do. This is what I think Sam Harris kind of does, is rather than explain how morality can be objective, he sort of redefines morality in the sense that we define medicine, or good medicine or bad medicine, based on how well it improves or detriments our health.
Yeah.
And what Harris is trying to do is he's saying, well, okay, we should do the same thing for morality. We should say that morality should be defined by how well it affects our well-being. So in the same way that medicine is defined by health, morality is defined by well-being. But the thing is, because we define medicine by health, you're right, but the health itself is still an assumption. Because, again, why do we value health? Now the purpose,
so it's the same assumption being made on either hand.
The purpose of medicine is to improve health, so it's fine. If that's how you're defining medicine, then that's a fine thing to say. But then you couldn't say that homeopathy is objectively wrong. You could just say that it's objectively wrong if your assumption is that you want better health.
Exactly.
But you can't say that it's just wrong. And this is what I think is the contention here. We're not. When Harris says, throwing acid in someone's face is objectively wrong, what he's really saying is, assuming that well-being is a good thing, it's objectively wrong, which is true. If we assume certain things,
and you wanted to say that it's objectively wrong that homeopathy is objectively wrong.
Yes.
You do have to make the assumption that medicine is based on.
But the reason
health.
that we value health is because if we're in good health, then we've improved well-being.
But that's still an assumption, isn't it? It's the same kind of an assumption.
But this is what I'm saying. Why are we making this assumption? Because, like I say, I wouldn't say that any form of medicine is objectively morally right or wrong. I wouldn't say that it's right as a fact of the universe. I would say that it's right.
But you do say to people what they ought to do.
Yes, but again,
you wouldn't say to your friend, "Hey, drink some aluminium."
No, but
aluminum for you Americans.
I would concede. I would concede that that's subjective. So, but I do the same. I do the same thing for morality.
So what you've done is you've said you're now in a position where you go, okay, there is no objective morality and there is no objective medicine. They both depend on an assumption. So the thing is that most people do this. What they do is they speak about medicine without ever demanding that it self-justify this assumption, but they never ask the same of morality. Now, all medicine, all of it, when you break it down, whether it's African voodoo or homeopathy or Western surgery, they all break down to health. But that is, in that sense of the word, of an assumption. It is. What Sam says is that almost all sciences, I think he says all sciences, do have base assumptions. Like how just talking, having rational discourse, you can't prove reason without reason. You've heard all of this. There are axiomatic assumptions that everybody makes at all times. It's just that we notice it more in the discourse of morality. That's what Sam's point is, and that's where I'm thinking that is the case.
Okay.
So if you're going to say that, okay, that's an assumption and therefore it's not objective, you have to say that medicine is an assumption and therefore it's not objective.
But I could say this is the thing. Medicine in its nature is practical. And so I would argue it is morality. It's practical in nature.
So what do you mean by practical?
Well, in the sense that medicine, the purpose, the reason it was invented, everything about it is for practical purposes.
So it's prescriptive. It's telling you
yes, exactly.
It is in the ought business. It's an ought
yes,
science.
Well, precisely, yes.
And so is morality.
But I'm saying what Harris is doing is he's taking away the practical argument. He's not just saying, practically speaking, morality can be judged because we all assume that well-being is a good thing. So once we've had that assumption, let's practically go about seeing how we can best attain that.
Sure.
He's going further than that and saying, well, this assumption that we all have, I can prove why this is an objective fact of nature.
Once you've made the assumption.
Yes, but this is the same thing about medicine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that medicine is subjective at its basis of health because we all agree, and nobody is going out there.
And we all agree when it comes to morality.
Nobody's going out there saying that they can prove that good health is an objective fact of nature, that good health is a good thing. Nobody's saying that. They're just saying...
Because in the same way that no one's doing that with well-being.
Yeah, well I think they are. That's what Harris is doing.
No, but if you demand that they do that with well-being and not demand that they do that with health, you're requiring more from the science of morality than the science of health.
I don't think I'm demanding that people do that of morality.
Sure.
What I'm saying is that Sam Harris is trying to do that with morality. I didn't, I didn't ask it to, but he seems to be trying to do that, and I think that he hasn't done it. I don't feel convinced by it. So, if Sam Harris were to say, well, look, actually, I've had a think, and turns out that well-being can't be objectively proven to be true, but that also means that health being a good thing isn't objectively true either. I'd say, yeah, I agree. Fine. Sure. It's all subjective.
So this is like my point that I'm trying to make, and that is that I don't want people to have their cake and eat it too, because that's what people were doing. Like, you're right. If you want to now go around saying that there are no right and wrong answers when it comes to medicine, homeopathy is just as right as African voodoo, and it's just as right as Western surgery, then at least you're being consistent by taking a prescriptive...
It depends on the goal. So, for instance, when I'm discussing morality
is the goal an assumption?
Yes,
exactly.
But that's the thing. But when I'm discussing morality with someone, let's say I was opposite a racist person.
Sure.
What I would do is I'd find the common ground. That sounds like an impossible task, but it's there, trust me. So I'd say, okay, why is it that you discriminate, or that you intrinsically hate a certain ethnic minority, say? And they might say, well, I think that they do no good to humanity. And I say, so what? And they say, well, I value. I disagree with that. So I say, okay, so go further. Why do you think that? And they say, well, because I value well-being, and I think that these people are detrimenting well-being. And I say, well, hold on, because I value well-being too. So we're on that level ground. Now, I would concede that is entirely subjective. I value well-being, he values well-being subjectively. But once we have that assumption, I can then make objective points. I can say you are objectively wrong in being a racist if you're trying to improve well-being.
Exactly.
But still, and that's why I'm saying it's a good book, because once you have that assumption...
That's the value that you see it.
Yes.
As soon as you meet someone, which is ironically everybody, that says that the morality is based on well-being, you can have that conversation.
Exactly, which is why we feel as though it's objective.
Yeah, which is why you can have the same conversation when it comes to health.
Yes.
No matter what medicine people are putting forward, chiropractors, etc., you can have a conversation and you can say that something's objective because you both are running on the assumption, or you're both having the same value behind it of being health.
Yes.
Well, that's the same with morality. So if you're debating a Christian and he's saying that his morality is Christianity and it's given to him from God, when you go why, you always get to well-being.
Yes.
And as you just said, there are right and wrong answers about well-being. Even if we don't know the answer, there is. So your problem is actually only on a philosophical level.
Exactly.
For practical
That's precisely
purposes,
what I'm trying to say.
The point being is that you will meet no one that their morality doesn't eventually break down to well-being.
Yes.
So for all intent and purposes, you can have conversations with them saying that you are objectively wrong about this, in exactly the same way that you have conversations with people about medicine. Because you know that they have the assumption, you know that they have the value of health.
Yes.
But you never go around saying, why ought I value health? And that's not a knock on you.
But that's in a practical sense. I wouldn't dare, in a practical sense, you don't always need to philosophically inject things. Sometimes it's not the best thing to do. For instance, technically we're all just atoms and advanced breeds of ape, but if somebody got shot in the arm and they were in great pain, and I could just say, you know, oh, well, when you think about it, you're just an ape. That's not helpful, but it's true.
Yeah.
So it is purely philosophical, but this is a philosophical argument, okay? I don't deny that practically speaking...
He doesn't know. This is why he uses the word how science can determine values, not why philosophy can determine values.
Okay.
So I would disagree with you. I would say that it's
but
a science book.
This is the problem I have with the book, is that he seems to be doing something great and fantastic, but it's not what he says he's doing. So there is a philosophical...
I honestly think that you're asking more of him than what he has proposed to do.
I don't think that's the case.
Because no one asks this of somebody with health.
Yes.
What he's done in this book is he's tried his best to explain that we are looking at this the wrong way, that we are asking the science of morality to justify itself in a way that we ask no other branch of science to justify itself, which to me it means that either one, you apply it to all of the sciences and you end up with one hell of a situation where nothing's true, or you go, fine, if I'm accepting medicine is based on health, I do have to accept that morality is based on well-being. Right. And if we move away from the philosophical realm and we go to the practical application of just knowing things, your well-being, you have different morals than me, I assume. Like, do you eat meat?
I do.
So
yes.
I don't, okay?
Yeah.
So it's just a moral difference, okay? I'm not going to preach.
No, I actually, funnily enough, agree that I can't philosophically defend eating meat. I've said before, I hope to be a vegan one day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm vegetarian at the moment, but I hope to be vegan myself, and I can't defend it. But the point being there is that the reason that we can have a debate is because we do assume, no matter who you meet, if you meet a racist, if you meet a Christian, often they're the same. If you no, it's a joke. If you meet, that was a terrible joke. The point being is that if you meet anyone with a morality and you really do break it down to the fundamental level,
it's the same.
Practically speaking, it's based on well-being. Yes. All you have to do is come into a discussion with somebody, get them to admit that their morality is ultimately based on well-being, and then you can say you are objectively wrong.
Yes.
So, with it being a philosophical book, people end up in the philosophy a lot, when really
it's purely semantics almost, because it's like, you know, person A is saying, well, look, we all admit that morality is based upon well-being. All of our morality is, so there are objective facts to know. And I'm like, yeah, but all I'm saying is that just because
it's still an assumption to say that
it's still an assumption that we should value it. Like, so what?
So if I haven't made this clear, I agree with you.
Right.
You know that I agree with you, right?
I didn't actually. I wasn't sure.
I agree with you that it's an assumption.
Okay.
However, the same assumption is made in other sciences, such as medicine.
That not almost like a two-clock fallacy to say, you know, well, that's doing it too, and we give that a free pass, so should we give this a free pass?
Not so much. So what you've got is you've got two branches of science.
Yes.
One of them you say and you accept, and you go around with a prescriptive statements. You tell people what they ought to do. You ought not take homeopathy because it is objectively wrong. But you don't with this. Now what I'm saying is that the relationship between morality and well-being is almost, from a foundational perspective, identical to medicine's relation to health. So unless you can tell me how this fundamentally different in some way, you need a justification to treat this like it's facts and go around treating it like going around making the assumption that medicine is based on health, but not making the assumption here. It seems like you treat this like a practical prescriptive science, and you won't allow this to come out of this philosophical state
area.
And I understand that, and I think it's a cultural thing, and morality is a hard thing to get behind, and it's deeply rooted. But it seems to me, as you can see from what I'm saying here, when you really break it down, it's not. there is a science of morality. And even if you ignore that, as you've said as you agree with me, whoever you talk to, it is based on morality. It is based on well-being. So for all practical purposes, it's definitely right. Philosophically, you could say it has got an assumption. But to just reiterate that again, same is true of medicine and health.
Okay.
So that's why I currently accept it, because I accept that medicine can tell me what I ought to do, despite the fact that it makes that assumption about health, and so I accept that morality can tell me.
What you're almost saying is that, it's an assumption, but it makes no practical difference. So we can make practical arguments about morality, objective practical arguments, and we can sort of ignore the philosophical underlying. We can talk about it as a field of interest, as we're doing now, but when we leave this table, we have our moral standards, which we believe we can prove objectively, because we both assume well-being.
Yeah, and another way to put it is, when I say to you, your morality, once you speak to me and and I say to you, if you say to me, Steve, is your morality based on well-being? And I said yes. You now admit that you can tell me that I'm objectively right and wrong.
Absolutely.
That's all you need.
Yes.
Because couple that with the fact that every single person's morality fundamentally breaks down to well-being, whether they know this or not. All practical purposes, you have objective morality.
But then,
in the same way that you have objective health, because
all
kinds of medicine say that.
Yeah, the only difference I have is that underlying objective, that underlying principle that well-being is a good thing.
Yep.
Now, it's an objective fact that everybody's morality eventually comes down to well-being.
Yep.
But what it really comes down to is the want to improve well-being.
Yeah.
Right? And all I'm saying is that's just an opinion we all share, but it's subjective and can't be proven to be objective. With the medicine example, yes, I would say that it is objectively true that medicine improves your health.
If you accept
But I wouldn't say that medicine is objectively good. I just say it objectively will improve your health. You see what I'm saying?
Sorry, so cover this part again. You're saying that...
So I'm saying medicine objectively improves your health. There's no doubt about it. Or like good medicine. Or you can make objective claims about medicine that relate to health.
You can only say that it's good. You can only say that it does anything, really, once you've already injected a value.
But all I'm saying is that it improves health, objectively. Good medicine improves health. Or effective medicine improves health.
You still have to have already defined, in order to say that something's good.
What health
is. You already must have defined it as something.
I see what you're saying.
So this is the angle where I was caught on for a long time.
Yes.
And I have tried to hit it from every angle, and I cannot find a way to break that chain, if you see where I'm coming from.
Yes.
And I also know, but I'm not too articulate on the matter, that it's true of every science.
Yes.
So it's not just medicine. It's crazy, but once I realised that we make axiomatic assumptions about every field of science, that is when I realised that it is logically inconsistent of me to demand that the science of morality overcome an impossible objection that I do not simultaneously demand of other sciences. And that leaves you in a position where you either have to say that nothing works, which no one can actually do, because it also means that reason and rationality doesn't work.
Yes.
Or you have to say there is a science of morality. And this is just on a philosophical plane. If you go down to a practical plane, the game is already set and won.
But I do think...
As Sam would say, not allowing special rules, it's almost like a reverse special pleading. Allowing special rules for all of the sciences and not for morality is how you play tennis without the net.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I see. But I do still think that morality is different in its nature to the other sciences, in the sense that, take the science of medicine. Medicine is defined by health in its definition. I'm sure that you don't. Let's not bother. But if you looked it up in the dictionary,
but who's to say it should be?
Well, no, but this is the thing. Like.
No, I don't mean to interrupt you so quickly.
No, that's fine. But I see what you're saying.
What
I'm saying is that medicine, the aim of medicine, we've decided that the aim of medicine is to relate to health. Now, health being a good thing is still subjective, but that means that when we're making claims about medicine, because definitively medicine has to relate to health, we can talk objectively about medicine and just assume it relates to health. But morality, the definition of morality isn't that which concerns well-being, it's that which concerns good and bad. And whilst well-being is, like you say, well-being comes from consciousness, well-being comes from the mind, it can be measured, it can be scanned and put on a screen, good and bad can't, they're concepts. And because morality...
Because good and bad raises or decreases well-being.
Yes, but not, that's the thing, that's an assumption in itself.
Yeah, but I would say the same is true of health.
Good and bad are concepts. And that's
good,
what morality...
Good means that it's fulfilling whatever you've defined it to do.
Well, no, but this is the thing,
Right?
Good doesn't have a clear definition. And so because morality is based upon good and bad are subjective, that makes morality itself subjective. Whereas medicine is definitively based on health. So I would also say that yes, health being a good thing is subjective, but I don't know how to articulate this. Morality doesn't have well-being in its definition. So whilst there are objective facts to know about well-being, it's not necessarily linked to morality. Morality is just linked to good or bad, which is entirely subjective. Whereas medicine is definitely linked to health, which there can be facts known about. Do you see what I'm saying?
All I see is that as a culture, we've recognised and we now unanimously label medicine we recognise the relationship between, and we make the assumption, whereas with morality, we're not there yet.
Well, that's it, that's what I'm saying.
But when you speak to people, you find that it all goes to well-being. So the point being is that yes, we don't know we don't know morality well.
Yes.
But the same could be said of health. If you meet someone that thinks that smoking's good, or even better than that, like they're defining medicine to be something else. One, you can't really have a conversation. But just as there's just more acceptance of it as a culture, and we make those assumptions, but we don't make those assumptions when it comes to morality.
Can you see that in almost so many words? That's almost what I said at the beginning, in the sense that I think that Sam Harris is redefining morality, which is a good thing.
So would you say that people redefined medicine to mean health?
No, I think the difference there is that medicine from the beginning pertained to health. Morality at the beginning pertained to good and bad, and perhaps we're on the path to changing the definition of morality to refer to well-being, which I think would be a fantastic thing to do. Because again, if we do this...
Because you can be born and not recognise it.
Yes.
The way that we were born and didn't recognise the importance of health.
It removes cultural relativism. Sam Harris makes a good point that oftentimes if we go into... if I went into Somalia and said you shouldn't be putting women in bags, they'd probably say...
Yeah.
They would accuse you of, I think he uses the term cultural imperialism, which is a fair point. That is done.
Yeah.
So if we do redefine morality to mean well-being, then we can go in and say, morally speaking, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing if we do
So
redefine
here's
morality.
an interesting question when it just comes to practical purposes. Let's say, what example did you use? You used... what country did you just use?
Oh, Somalia,
So if you go into Somalia and you was able to have a conversation, unlikely, but if you was able to have a conversation with them and you was able to get them to break down why they're doing what they are doing, whatever it's based on, as you've admitted, it will break down to well-being. So you can make objective statements.
Yes.
They won't accept it. They will be impolite, to say the least.
Yes, but
but if they
I think that you have changed my perspective on this ever so slightly. I still think that there is a philosophical case to be made that the basis that we all assume is still subjective. So, for instance, when you go and debate someone like Frank Turek, when you debate somebody who says morality is objective because it comes from God, well-being is objectively a good thing because God says it is, then I can say, well, okay, that link that you're making, once we've broken it down to assume that we both want well-being, I say that I want well-being because... well, I can't help it. Evolutionarily, it's been instilled into me that well-being is a good thing. You want well-being because you think it comes from God. That's where the philosophical discussion lies. So we can still have arguments and say, well, you're wrong because well-being being a good thing isn't an objective fact, it's subjective. But then when we get into the practical realm, when we get to actually having discussions about what we should do, the ought sense, so not philosophically, what's the
not working on the assumption.
What's the grounding for morality? When you're talking about what we should do in terms of morality, we can then make objective fact, so long as we all assume well-being, which ultimately we do. So I think the task would be then, when we're trying to make moral judgments and have discussions about it, the first thing, this would be what I've taken from this discussion. Whenever I now go in to talk about morality with someone, the first thing I think I'm going to do every time is make sure that we're both entirely clear that both of our positions are based on well-being. And I think once we do that, absolutely, I can 100% agree that this book has merit in that there are objective facts to know about how morality works.
Excellent.
I think that's a fair summary of my position now.
That's great. Awesome.
I don't know if you agree with that. If that's
so I go a step further, and first of all, hats off to you, that's great. And if you go away and you end up finding another objection, just let me know, maybe another conversation or whatnot. I think what you've put there is a great point. Any kind of conversation with anyone that wants to talk about morality, you can get them to break down their morality, and they can be wrong, by the way, in how they think it breaks down. So for example, somebody says to you, I want well-being is my value because God has told me well-being is my value, they're wrong. I would actually say that if you break it down further, they want to be in heaven and not hell, and they think that's the best way to improve well-being.
Yes.
So once you get them to admit that well-being is what they're talking about, and here's the thing, everybody, all moralities break down to it. You've got an objective argument to be had in the same way as soon as you get everybody to admit that their concept of medicine is based on health, you can objectively say, shove your homeopathy up your butt, you're wrong. And this is what frustrates me. People do it with medicine, they don't do it with morality, and it's because they haven't recognised the relationship. And I think the more that people can tie morality with well-being and show its relationship to be just as similar as medicine and health, the quicker people will get to that. But you're completely right, and I think that's the exact way that I will start moral questions as well. Moral arguments, I will immediately get them to admit that it's on well-being, and
I think that's a fantastic point. That even if you're saying your morality comes from God, why would you then adhere to that? Well, because you want to be in God's good books. Why? Because you want to go to heaven. Why? Because it's well-being. It always breaks down to it. So. Practically speaking, I'm still holding my philosophical contention. I'm still reserving my right to defending the idea of moral subjectivity. But in a practical sense, when we're talking about morality, when we're talking about oughts, although we can't necessarily philosophically defend these oughts, we can't philosophically say that something is objectively wrong. We can practically say that something is objectively right.
I see, yeah. So you see it as that.
That's what I take away.
Is that how you see medicine?
Yes, same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. Because I would
is
say
that how you see all science?
I guess you have to, because
Exactly.
take the science of medicine. You just have,
So
like you say, you have to make the assumption.
You have to make the assumption.
You have to, but it's still an assumption. So
yes, agreed.
Philosophically, I can't defend medicine.
So the point,
I can't do it, but I can practically defend medicine until the cows come home.
No, that's great. I mean, all I would say, two points I would say is that one is that if you try to recognise that you do not, even though you recognise that there's assumptions made in health, you do not conduct your life with that assumption in mind. You conduct it with that, if you say that assumption is what it is, let's move from here.
Yes.
I would say that to be logically consistent, you do need to do the same with morality. And the other thing is that, so it's actually two more things. One of the things is, people don't change their ideas during conversations. So like, if you had said something that had rattled me, as you have before when we've had conversations, your mind's either changed or you managed to support it in a different way by going away and digesting it. It just seems to be that's the way that the human mind works.
Yeah.
Or if you're a theist, you never change your mind. No, I'm kidding. I'm only kidding. I'm kidding.
Try to be respectful.
I am. I'm only joking. I'm only joking.
One of the virtues of my channel, I think, is that I so many jokes. You wouldn't believe how many jokes I've thrown out just because I'm trying to keep it respectful.
You are. You're a very friendly
Sometimes.
atheist in that sense. I am definitely a little bit more cantankerous.
Yes.
I'm only mean it as a little joke.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is that we both practically agree. Philosophically, I think there's still some contention. But I think that's a fantastic place to leave the discussion.
Yeah, I do as well.
If you agree.
Yeah,
but
I do.
I think one of the most interesting things about this is going to be seeing what these guys think.
Yes. So I can say one thing, and that is that I am in the minority here. So I expect.
Well, I don't know that you are. It's bizarre that in the grand scheme of science, I think most scientists are. I don't want to say moral relativists, but they don't believe in objective.
Yeah, they don't.
Morality. But in the field of like
and philosophers entirely don't.
In the field of atheism and the sort of people who would read Sam Harris, in that a majority do agree with him. So
well, I might be surprised.
So I feel as though, in the grand scheme of things, I'm the majority, and in this sort of field,
you think in this field
bubble,
that I will
on this channel,
it'll be
you're the majority.
It'll be very interesting to see.
Yes.
Everything that I've noticed is that it's not the case. Like, people just are not getting their heads around it. They don't accept it, or I'm just wrong. You know, that which is totally possible.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But either way, like, it's important that they know that, you know, it's just a conversation. We're friends. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. But I'm very interested in hearing what all of you have to say. So
Absolutely.
if you've enjoyed this discussion, do let us know. And also any opinions you have on this,
Yeah.
Be sure to leave them down. I'm going to try and sort of discuss with some of you guys, because I do want to have my mind changed. It's always good fun. But also, before we go, I want to briefly mention that this copy of The Moral Landscape that we have on the table, we're going to be giving away. We're also giving away a copy of Free Will, which is another sort of source of interesting discussion, which we're going to continue to talk about.
Absolutely.
We're going to do that over on your channel, I believe. So if you want to see a discussion on free will, which I think will be probably slightly more agreeable.
I assume so, yeah.
They're very interesting, like the sort of moral...
But it always was going to be.
Yeah. Well, don't really have much of a choice in the matter. The moral accountability in a deterministic world, that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about that over on your channel. Rationality rules. Links, of course, will be in the description. But yes, we'll be giving away a copy of each of these books. If you want to win, all you have to do is make sure you're following both of us on Twitter so that we can contact you. That's not just a plug, but hey, kill two birds with one stone.
Why not?
Just tweeted us something amusing, something to do with the discussion that we've been having, anything that you think will be of interest and relevance, and use the hashtag Cosmic Rationality. I think that we can we can be sure that nobody else is going to be using
I
that.
doubt so, yeah.
So if you use that hashtag, tweet us something that you think is of worth, and we'll go through and whatever sort of really strikes a chord with us, we'll send you a book and we'll message you. We can sign it if you want, even though I've always found that to be incredibly egotistical, but people seem to...
Yeah, I find it weird, but at the same point, at least,
this book can be yours, so go ahead and do that. You can find both of our social medias on the screen now, and of course links will always be in the description. But for our discussion on free will, which I'm very excited for now, hop over to Steve's channel, which will be in the description. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one.
Awesome. Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, good one.
That's good. Oh gosh,
That's great. That was different.
That was
You can cut that bit out.
Yeah, we'll cut that.